So finance and funding. So I figured I'd go through a little bit because I'm sure you get a bit of a touch on it every month. But the most important person at the beginning is going to be your broker, because they've got two sides to answer. You've got both. How are you going to fund the deal in the first place? And how are you going to be able to get out the deal at the end of it? Because there's no point in starting a deal if you can't get out of it. Because if you've got a property that's not going to be mortgageable, don't bother doing it. But if you've got a broker in at the beginning, they might turn and say, look, you've gone off, you've got planning before you bought it, you've actually lifted the value of the property, so why don't we get you something called an open market value development finance or bridging loan, so we lend against the value of the property, not what you pay for it. So then suddenly you're reducing, on this deal I've actually only got 30 grand of cash in it to own the building. And so you need to work with a broker who's open-minded, understands development and understands property, because if you just go to your residential broker down the road, they're just going to look at you, eyes are going to roll back, not going to have a clue, and it'll probably go, even though it's probably got the juiciest fee on their books, they're going to put it at the bottom of their pile because they just don't understand it. So you need to work with the right broker. And then family offices, and this might sound a bit odd. So I started using originally with this deal, I started working with a bridging lender. We got through all the way through the process, and then they turned and said, they basically said, this is taking a bit too long for us to get our money out on the deal, we're going to close this one off. And then I said, what are we going to do next? And I spoke to my broker again, and he went to a family office. And a family office, there's a few of them all around the country, and be a family where they've got money in trust, and they will typically lend it to investors or developers for a fixed amount of time. But the great thing was there's only 3 people in their business, and the head of funding turned up on my building site, met with me, walked around it and said, I can see what you're trying to do here, I can see why you're trying to do it, I can see the end goal, shook my hand on it and said, yeah, all right, we'll lend you the money. But yeah, as I said, open market value, if you can add the value on the start of it using planning permission, you can put less cash into the deal, which if you're trying to get that kind of momentum and get going, it's a really good way to get you started. Lenders always do want to see a bit of your own cash in, or cash in the deal, so you might be able to get a private investor on board who's lent you money towards the purchase. That could work quite well. There's always going to be arrangement fees, so don't forget them. There's usually 2%. Depending who you're borrowing the money from, you might have an exit fee. An exit fee can be 1%, 1.5%, and some lenders do it for free. But you just need to get all this information at the beginning. And they'll lend all the money towards development of the project. So the idea is if you're going to go out and build the whole site, you're not going to sit there and say, right, I've got 300 grand to buy it, I've got 600 grand to do it. Really, if you've got a 600 grand development, you might want to have, say, 100 grand that you raise, and then you then recycle through those funds. So then effectively you do 100 grand of work, the valuer comes back out, sees the work you've done, they lend you that £100,000 again to keep going. So they want you to see and keep working through the project. And then, as I said earlier at the very beginning, if you're looking to sell, make sure that lend is longer, because it might take longer for those units to sell. And as I said, with the exit, you always want to have a look at what's happening at the beginning. So what rates are available to get a rough idea where you're going to exit, how you're going to use the properties at the end of it. You need to think about the property's use. So you're going to be using it for an Airbnb. Are you going to be using each of the units as flats? Are you going to be using them as HMOs? Because in Norwich, for example, we don't have an Article 4 area. So I can just turn all my units straight into HMOs if I wanted to. But others might not work, so you just need to pin that at the beginning. And you might turn and say, also there's lenders. So when you have a chat with your broker, they might turn and say, actually, you are right next door to a pub. The odds on me getting lending on this for just a residential flat or for selling it on might be hard. So we're going to have to think about your exit and who you're going to sell and how you're going to sell it. And then again, refinance turnaround. If you've got your lend set up for 12 months, you want to get that refinance all set up and kicking off at probably about month 8, month 9. So it's already in the motion. You can then get your valuer booked in. If you've booked in at month 8, at month 9, the valuer turns up. Month 10, the solicitor's been sitting in his hands and done jack all. Month 11, you're still chasing. Month 12, and he's just asking, oh, do you have that building control certificate? And you're like, yes, I do. But you need to make sure you leave time for it. So, I don't know, do you want to see a video of it?
Yeah.
Yes. Cool. So hopefully this is going to work. Well, I'll turn the music.
Now we want to hear
that. So this is just me walking around outside 34 Yarmouth Road, and we're just going into the property, and I believe we've just started the rip out on the whole thing. You can see that we took off the whole roof of the property, and the reason we took the roof off at the very beginning is if you strip it off, it's no longer habitable and it's no longer valuable for business rates. So I don't pay any business rates in the building now, it's empty and unusable. And you can see it's an absolute shell and it's in far worse condition, but it's only once you usually strip the property back you can actually see this. And the whole idea of stripping it back to this stage was when a builder turned up on site to quote for the works, they can see where it is and the standard it is. But here I'm pointing at the outside, and you can see down to the basement where we're then going to be converting that space into the 3-bedroom flats over the 2 floors. I've got a feeling I'm going to be walking outside. And then we've got the whole back of it faces straight onto the river. And the great thing about it is it's on the Broad, so the opposite side of it's in a conservation area. It can never be developed. So that property will forever have river views that are completely unencumbered, nothing else around it. So as we come round, ta-da! The river. But we do have a pub to next door. I'm hoping they're going to like it eventually, because if they've got 6 Airbnbs, then hopefully they're going to quite like having people in for dinner, drinks, and that side of it. But the one bit is down the road in Thorpe. They've all got hire boats and everything else that people can use in the area. So I was going to include leaflets for those, and then also include a rowing boat for 2 of them, so people get a little bit more fun out of the place. And then let's see if we show you any more of this. I think that roughly gives you an idea that you've just seen my whole face the whole time. And you haven't had enough of that yet, have you?